Hello. Good evening, everybody. This is April 4th, 2019. Meeting of the Northampton City Council. My name is Ryan O'Donnell. I'll be presiding tonight. These proceedings are being audio and video recorded and broadcast on NCTV to all your neighbors and friends. And we'll begin with public comment, as we always do. This is an opportunity for the public to speak on any issue you wish. There's only 2 rules. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes. And what's the second rule? The second rule is we don't respond. This is your time to give your opinion to us. So please be mindful of that. But you can follow up with your counselors afterwards if you have an item of concern that we can't discuss tonight. So let me start the sign-up sheet, and when this is exhausted, I'll ask anyone else who hasn't signed up. And the first person is Penny Geis. Approach the podium, and the floor is yours.
Hi, I'm Penny Geis. I live on Front Street. I'm here to say thank you to the Department of Public Works. This is about an issue that's on your agenda tonight. They have collaborated with us in providing a bench for our little parklet that was designed and is maintained by local people in Leeds. And the Leeds Civic Association just voted to pay for a bench to go there. And because there's such great collaboration with the DPW and the Leeds Civic Association, it's not costing us anywhere near as much as it would if we were buying it totally on our own. So just a public thank you to Donna for her collaborative style of working with us.
Well, I know that's appreciated. Thank you. Thank you very much. Now ask Mark Warner. Mr. Warner.
Hi, I'm Mark Warner. A month or so ago, I spoke to the council about the issue of potential smells from marijuana cultivation and processing facilities that are scheduled to show up here in Northampton. The city has signed 15 host agreements with marijuana businesses, and 4 of them currently are cultivation and processing facilities. And I brought up the issue of the severe smells that these are created for their neighbors, for the broad neighborhood with half a mile or more from the facilities that have affected places wherever these have become legal elsewhere in the country and in Canada. And if you look at the internet, quickly just look at smells from marijuana processing and cultivation, you will see that it comes up as an issue in California, Colorado, Nevada, Ontario, places where they have legalized marijuana and had a year or so of experience with it. Now, there are no such laws that are affecting this issue here in Northampton. And I was hoping that the City Council would take up the measure here to go and make sure that these experiences, the experiences in some cases are not just undermining the quality of life, but undermining the property values and leading people in some cases to actually move away and abandon their properties altogether. The case I brought up, the example I brought up last time, was the man who was the planning commissioner in Norfolk County, Ontario, who said there are now people living in southern Ontario that are as if they were in the midst of 10,000 skunks. And this is a condition I hope won't happen here. Now, aren't there laws in Massachusetts that would affect this? Well, the Cannabis Control Commission does have a series of laws affecting marijuana, but none of these deal with smell. There is a requirement that the companies that are proposing licenses do present their mitigation measures. But the Cannabis Control Commission, Matt Giancola, a spokesman for the commission, told me that they are not going to use odor as a criterion for withholding a license or withholding renewal. It is purely a local matter. Northampton does not have any laws about this. The measures have come up, these changes in the laws, changes in conditions of marijuana have gone up fast, and the regulations have come up to deal with it. Now, I did try and get a meeting with the mayor. I understand you've been very busy, and I watched the school committee meeting last time, and you sat very stoically. I feel for you, but this is an issue, and if you're banking on marijuana revenue alone, is going to be undermined by declining property values that could affect the budget the other way. So now I'm hoping, I don't want this to be just a repeat of what I brought up at the committee, at the council a month ago, but I want a few things to, maybe we can get the ball rolling here. I will, and by the way, can you pass a law after the fact if it does happen here? Well, recognize too that the changes you're talking about would be changes to the zoning code. And that would make a land use that is creating these conditions for their neighbors, for their butters. It will make them non-conforming, but it will not make them unlawful. So you will have some problem here that will not be easy to solve. So it does call for some swift action to go and get these laws in place before these become facts on the ground. So I will be sending to the council tomorrow a proposed ordinance change, very simple ordinance change that brings it up to date to deal with broader facilities than just medical marijuana. So I hope you will take this up at your next meeting, refer it to the legislative committee, get it out to the city solicitor to deal with, hold your hearings, and I believe that then when it comes back to the committee, you too will be able to go and recognize the virtues of making this change. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those comments. Now we turn to Jonathan Wright.
Good evening, Jonathan Wright, 91 Olander Drive. I just wanted to take a few moments to make some observations and to say thank you. I think Penny did a pretty good job on her part, and I'm going to follow on that. So I have a lot of concerns about government and government operations, but none of them rest here in our city government. None. Last fall, the DPW sent a nice young man, seemed young to me, up with some equipment and a shovel to dig out the Memorial Park fountain basin and prepare that for some work. Very efficient. And he stopped at one point, very animated, when he'd finished his work. He pulled out his phone. He said, "Jonathan, let me show you the research I did this morning over coffee about what this used to look like." So this is a laborer who was so interested in his work and what was happening in the city, he wanted to tell me about the history of the place. I thought that was incredibly cool. I went to vote, and I had to vote early, and I went into the city clerk's office. It's very quiet in there, and I realized what an incredibly solemn moment that is. People around the world die for an opportunity to go in a safe place and mark a piece of paper and know it will be handled with care. So I thought, this is a beautiful thing. And not into the machines, I've done all that. This was different somehow. I can't quite put my finger on it. I was wondering how to get an abatement on water, on stormwater for my project up in Florence. I called the number, and she said, "Oh, that's very easy. I'll send you the form. You just do it once. I'll apply it to all the units." It was done. It took about 3 minutes. No bureaucracy. And I suppose I've saved maybe the best for last, which is Tree Northampton. I'm a tree guy. I love trees. I love them standing. I love them on the ground. I like them made into stuff. But this group that has put together a public-private partnership, my wife and I have learned how to take care of the roots, understand this volcano mounding business, the joys and tribulations of pruning. And the city, as a result of Rich Parcelletti's efforts, and Tree Northampton now has hundreds of knowledgeable tree pruners and tree carers. So I just wanted to give you those little vignettes about what a wonderful place this is to live. And thank you for making that happen. And the only thing I would ask you is, as you travel around and you come across some of the staff in the city, remind them that we really appreciate it a whole lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wright, and those comments are also very appreciated. Thank you for taking the time to come deliver those. So that exhausts the list. Is there anyone else who would like to speak who hasn't signed up? No? Okay. Hearing none, we will convene, and I'll ask for a roll of the council.
Councilor Goodwell.
Here.
Councilor Carney. Present. Councilor Dwight. Councilor Klein. Councilor Labarge.
Present.
Councilor Murphy. Councilor Nash.
Here.
Councilor O'Donnell.
Here.
Councilor Shara.
Here.
Okay, well, we are here, mostly. We have 6 out of 9 counselors. Still a supermajority, technically, so we're ready to go. No hearings tonight. One update from me for the public. At our last meeting, the council created a select committee on pesticide reduction. This is a committee that will include counselors as well as citizens. Well, counselors are citizens, but you know, regular people, residents of the city, up to 8 of them, may be appointed to this special committee whose purpose is to study and make recommendations about the use of pesticides and other issues in the city. and I will appoint 8 of those people. And so I'd just like to let everyone know that the applications continue to be open. You can visit a page on the City Council website for more information, and if you're interested, you can send a letter of interest to our administrative assistant. The email address is citycouncil@northamptonma.gov, and just detail your professional background and interest. And those appointments will be made by April 18th. Okay? Any other updates from anybody? Anything? No? Okay. So, Mr. Mayor, I think you have an update to share with us. I'll turn it over to you.
Sure, certainly. Just a couple of quick communications. First off, I did email the council yesterday about information that we received from the Department of Revenue, and you probably may have read about it in today's paper, but I just provided you with a kind of a summary sheet, which is included, part of what was included in the email that I sent you, but then sort of the second piece of it, which is just the host community agreement fee. And those two numbers constitute the big headline today. But obviously 2 separate sources of money. And as I said in my email to you, this isn't money that we actually have access to right now, nor the second payment. But we will be coming back to you to set up a special stabilization fund for the host community agreement money, so that we're prepared when we move into FY20 to be able to put those specialized funds in there. And then, as I said in the email, we'll be working on projections for what our FY20 revenue might look like in an ever-changing industry. Today, the Cannabis Commission approved another adult use retailer in Chicopee. So there'll be one more Western Mass, Pioneer Valley retailer. So they're continuing, I think, slowly. Seems like every couple of weeks, every month or so, they've been averaging about 4 or so a month. So we're sort of be watching how that shapes up. The only other thing related to it, and it actually even relates a little bit to what Mr. Warner said, I will be bringing forward a package of some modifications to the city's ordinances related to cannabis. And they specifically are dealing with a couple of issues that we didn't really deal with specifically when we completed our first zoning. One was about independent testing labs, and actually there will be a measure that speaks to the issue of the odor issue that Mr. Warner has talked about in terms of our zoning. We've done a little research on that, and so we've tried to incorporate some language that would speak to that as well. So we will be bringing that forward we hope by the next meeting to introduce, and just FYI on that as well.
Great. Thank you. Very interesting. Excellent. Okay. Good. So let's see. We have a consent agenda here. I'll read the items on it. At the request of any one counselor, we will remove an item for separate consideration. Otherwise, there's no debate on the consent agenda, which contains the minutes of March 21st, 2019. Go ahead.
I requested that be tabled until the next meeting because they were ready in time.
Oh, okay. So that's not even on there, so we don't have to remove it. Or we'll remove it either way. It's not in the consent agenda. Next, appointments to various committees, which have all received positive recommendations from the Committee on City Services. That is the question of the appointment of Jeremy Dubbs to the Disability Commission, Dubbs of 20 Hampton Avenue, Northampton. Benjamin Capistrant of 48 High Street to the Council on Aging. Next will be the question of the approval of petitions for second-hand dealer licenses. Yes, so second-hand dealer license articles, you can't be a dealer of second-hand articles without first obtaining a license from the City Council. And so these licenses expire first day of May. And so the renewal of the licenses will be for the following. First, the Family Jewels, 56 Green Street. Richard J. Stone is the petitioner. Jack Speyer Antiques, 416 North Main Street in Leeds. Jack Speyer, petitioner. Norman E. Menard of 25 Garfield Avenue. Guess that's also the name of the business. The petitioner, Norman E. Menard. Roz's Place, 6 Bridge Street. Timothy Saldo is the petitioner on that license. And those are those secondhand dealer licenses. Next, petitions for pool table licenses. We still do these in Massachusetts. Renewal of a license for the Packard's pool table, 14 Masonic Street, the Sunday license, as well as renewal of the license for Packard's for pool table, 14 Masonic Street, for the weekday license. Robert E. McGovern is the petitioner. Next, petition for a junk dealer license. This is a renewable license for Norman E. Menard of 25 Garfield Avenue. Norman E. Menard is the petitioner. More appointments, and I'll ask the Chair of City Services. These have not been reviewed by your committee, is that correct?
The two that are here have not, these are for referral.
Great, thank you. So this will be the equivalent of referring these to the Committee on City Services for review. That would be Robert Dion of 87 Vernon Street. Question of Mr. Dion's appointment to the Council on Aging. And Carmen Juno, question of Carmen Juno's appointment to the Housing Partnership. So, did I miss anything?
She's actually already been appointed. It's correction of a term length.
Yeah, because we
Right.
just spoke with, yeah.
Initial appointment.
The
Okay.
approved- Yeah,
So we approved it for a different term, other than what we want. Okay.
yes.
So
So
that
it's still
could be,
going back.
Counselor,
Do you
so
have a,
that,
do you have a removal? Do you want to remove that one?
Yeah.
Or do you have a point of information? Do you have a question? Go ahead.
my question is, I recall we had that problem once before, and we approved it of that night at City Council of approving it right then and there. Because we had already approved a
Yeah,
person.
I'll just ask if we can remove that item, and then if we can.
Yes.
Well, I mean, we did take this matter up. It's really just a matter of the change of dates coming from the mayor's office. But we recently just interviewed Carmen Juno for the same
Right.
position.
Well, the opinion of the chair will be, because I like to be a pain in the neck, that we'll have to
Me.
refer it back to the committee, because that's what the rules require under the charter. So, sorry about that.
No, I just hope it doesn't interrupt there. That's fine.
Okay. So I hear no removals from the consent agenda. Are there any removals? Then there's a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved. Second it?
Okay. All those in favor of the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed and abstentions? So that is approved. Thank you. And now, I think we'll turn it over to Councilor Carney. Is that right, to Chair Finance? in the
Yes,
absence
okay,
of
I'm just
Councilor Murphy?
looking at the lighting here. And would the, Laura, would you please call the roll of finance?
Councilor Murphy, Councilor Carney,
Present?
Councilor Labarge,
Present?
and Councilor Shara. Here.
Thank you. And could we first have a meeting of, an approval of the minutes from the previous meeting?
Move to approve.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. No additions or corrections, then that motion carries. Minutes are approved. Okay. And so the first financial order is Order 19.036, which is an order to approve the purchase of 85 acres plus or minus in the Mineral Hills, Rocky Hill, and Beaverbrook Greenways, and to appropriate CPA funds for such purpose. So upon recommendation of Mayor David J. Narkowitz, Planning and Sustainability, the Conservation Commission, and the Community Preservation Committee, in order, as I said, to approve purchase of 85 acres plus or minus Mineral Hills, Rocky Hill, and Beaverbrook Greenways, and to appropriate Community Preservation Act funds for such purposes. Whereas the Open Space, Recreation, and Multi-Use Trail Plan 2018 through 2025 recommends acquisition of land for recreation, conservation, and open space needs, preserving character of rural areas, farms, forests, and rivers, and provision of open space connections between public spaces, with specific recommendations for open space in the Mineral Hills, Rocky Hill, and Beaver Brook greenways. And whereas the city has an agreement or is negotiating to purchase 4 parcels, 19.1 acres in the Mineral Hills west of Glendale Road, 20 acres in the Mineral Hills west of Farms Road, 44.7 acres in the Beaver Brook Greenway west of Haydenville Road, and 1.7 acres in the Rocky Hill Greenway on East Hampton Road that fulfill the open space plan recommendations, meet unique open space and recreational needs, and fill gaps in the city's open space network. And whereas, excuse me, all parcels are adjacent to existing permanently protected open space or multi-use trail, and these acquisitions will enhance those areas and will create additional access and trail connection opportunities. And whereas the Northampton Conservation Commission and Office of Planning and Sustainability submitted a CPA application for purchase of these areas, and on March 20th, 2019, the Community Preservation Committee voted unanimously to recommend that $161,000 in Community Preservation Act funds be used to support this project. Any gaps in the funding will come from other grants, donations, and existing funds. Ordered that the Conservation Commission is authorized to purchase or otherwise acquire for conservation and passive restriction purposes, as provided by MGL Chapter 40, subsection 8C, any fee, easement, or conservation restriction as defined in MGL Chapter 184, subsection 31, or any other interest in the above lands and any immediately adjoining land, that the City Council hereby accepts such conservation restrictions, that the Conservation Commission is authorized to grant conservation restrictions on any land so acquired, with such related restrictions and agreements as the city determines are agreeable. Further, that $161,000 is appropriated from the Community Preservation Act for funding these acquisitions, and that the grantee meets the conditions approved by the Community Preservation Committee, the mayor, and the city council. Specifically, $161,000 is appropriated from the CPA undesignated reserve account. Is there a motion in finance?
Make a motion.
Second.
Okay, and is there any discussion from the mayor or planning about this particular item? Or maybe the director is here, okay. Thank you. Mr. Fiden?
Give an overview of the parcels, and
Thank
then
you.
if there's questions about CPA, Sarah LaValle from my office is here as well. So generally, when we come before you for acquisitions, we do one council order for one piece of property. Because CPA funded all 4 of these together, we're giving you a council order on them all together because it's easier in the process. So there's 4 parcels of land. Can you let up by any chance? There's 4 parcels of land. They're sort of scattered all over the city, which is good. They hopefully tell a story about how the acquisitions come together. So I'll just walk you through each property. So this is the overall map. I know it's hard to see, but there are 2 parcels on the lower left of this map, which is part of the Mineral Hills. There's 1 parcel all the way to the north, a little bit on the west, which is part of Beaver Brook. And there's 1 parcel off of Route 10, almost the East Hampton town line, that's very small, that's next to Rocky Hill Greenway. So I'll just walk you through each one. So this first parcel, the one at the top, this is off of Glendale Road. So we've acquired, with City Council support, a portion of Mineral Hills Greenway, which on this map is green. That has frontage on Glendale Road and Route 66 and the Ridge subdivision. And immediately south of that is the Wagging Dogs Dog Park, Wagging Tails Dog Park, which is going to be developed soon. What we're looking at buying is 19 acres that's the rear of Wagging Tails. It's owned by the same person, but it's not going to be part of the dog park. We have a great price. We're paying $500 an acre, which is a lot less than we usually pay, because the dog park person has to preserve a certain percentage of the property, but she doesn't have to preserve all of it, and she doesn't have to allow public access. So it's a wonderful opportunity for us to sort of complete those holdings right over there. The next, and then that one we have an agreement for, so we'd be ready to close if you vote on this as soon as you're ready. The next one we're still negotiating with. This is the rear of St. Mary's Cemetery in Leeds. It's a gorgeous piece of property. It's some vernal pools. It's basically by the confluence of Beaver Brook and the Mill River. This came to our attention. Leeds Civic Association approached us and asked us to prioritize it for for purchase, and has this wonderful, it has sort of not formal trails, but lots of walking opportunities. We want to buy, the Catholic Church wants to sell. It's a slow process, given going through them, so we don't have a signed agreement yet, but we're hoping this is going to happen. Next one, Laura. So this is the one on top. This is part of the Mineral Hills as well. This is west of West Farms Road. It's a wooded piece of property owned by John and Faye Omasta. It is a spectacular ledge on the western piece, and you can see it abuts a big portion of the Mineral Hills. So it's basically just, sort of beautiful wooded land and views. And then the last one, the bottom of the view. This is a very small parcel. It's next to Rocky Hill Greenway, so off Route 66. So if you're coming from City Hall, you go past the transfer station, you go underneath the bike path bridge, and immediately on the right past the bike path bridge is this property of land. It provides some opportunity for parking for the bike path, which we'd like to have more opportunities for. It's surrounded on 2.5 sides by conservation land, so it's an important part of that piece. It used to have a single-family home. At one point, we thought we were going to get a business here. The owner tore down the home, planning to do his business. Then he had some delays and didn't go forward. And because the home had been built on wetlands years ago when that was legal, once the home was gone, the wetlands started reemerging. So it's no longer a developable parcel of land. It's a really valuable conservation parcel for us. So that's my overview.
Yes, the 19.1 acres in the Mineral Hills west of Glendale Road.
Yep.
And how much did you say that the owner of this property on Glendale Road is giving the city per acre?
So it would be $11,000 for 19.1 acres, so $550.
So she is saying that she will give the city an acre for 500?
Well, she's selling the whole piece together,
Right,
but collectively. it's-
$500.
Well, close to $600, but somewhere in that range between them, so.
Okay. And I thought that when we were going through this process, Wayne, and we had the real estate from Florence, the realtor, involved in this, and I thought one of parts of this, of the conservation area, was given to the city.
So.
And that is over where Marcia and them live, where apparently there's going to be a trail that's going to be coming through somewhere in there.
Right, so two different things. So she is donating to the city an easement from the land which we already own down to Glendale Road. And that was a condition of her permit, so we're not paying anything for that property.
Okay.
So that she's giving to us. We won't actually own the land. We just have a right-of-way so we could build a trail on the property.
Okay.
So that's what her permit required. This land and back, she's under no obligation to give it to us.
Okay, thank you. Now, also, on the 20 acres in the Mineral Hills west of West Farms, I know the property, and it's just taken care of. It's absolutely beautiful out there. And at the 20 acres, we're looking at $24,000,
That's
correct?
Yes.
Breaking it down, 19.1 on Glendale Road and 20 acres, which I requested this price from you, of the breakdown, which is at $24,000.
That's correct.
So, at 20 acres, we're getting $24,000, and 19.1 acres, $11,000, correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay, questions, please?
I gather in terms of access issues and ledge issues and what, that Is it true that there's none of these parcels that have residential development potential?
That's correct. Because of wetlands and because of ledge.
Right.
The only one that has any development value, and it's the highest priced one, is the one on East Hampton Road. But given the wetlands, I don't think you could build a building. It might be a potential contractor's laydown yard, when you're doing construction. So there's some value there because of frontage, but not, again, there was a house, but once that got torn down, the wetlands came back. So,
Right.
correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor in finance? To send for full approval, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so that goes to finance with a full recommendation, positive recommendation. And the next one is the 19037, in order to appropriate $30,000 in CPA funds to Florence National Register Historic District Project. Ordered that, whereas the Committee for Northampton submitted an application for Community Preservation Act funding to prepare and submit an application for a National Historic District in Florence, quote, African Americans, Abolition, and Equal Rights in Northampton, 1835 to 1900. And whereas creation of a National Register Historic District will help preserve the built and natural landscapes associated with the abolitionists and progressive reformers who founded Florence and increase awareness of important local historic resources. And whereas this project has wide community support, and whereas on March 20th, 2019, the Northampton Community Preservation Committee voted unanimously to recommend that $30,000 in Community Preservation Act funds be used to support this project. Now therefore be it ordered that $30,000 be appropriated from Community Preservation Act funding to the Florence National Register Historic District Project, and that the grantee meets the conditions approved by the Community Preservation Committee, the mayor, and city council. Specifically, $30,000 is appropriated from the CPA Historic Reserve account. And is there a motion for positive recommendation and finance?
Make a motion?
Second.
And moved and seconded. Do we have anyone to speak to? Oh, it's Sarah. Okay, Sarah Lavelle.
I didn't
Thank
see
you. Okay.
Good evening. So Florence has Northampton and Florence in particular has a rich history of abolition and reform. Sojourner Truth and David Ruggles in the Florence Arts and Industry. The area has already been recognized as part of the state Underground Railroad National Register District, and this will expand and build upon that. And this project really just has tremendous public support. At the CPA public comment meeting, there were lots of people who came to the presentation and just really spoke eloquently about what this would mean to them and how it should move forward. So the CPA was happy to provide unanimous support.
Thank you. Any other questions from councilors? Yes, please.
Could you say a little more about the state Underground Railroad Historic District and how that interacts with what would become this
Sure.
federal national
So
district?
that actually was not a local initiative. That was put forward by Mass Historic to recognize some of these underground railroad sites around the state, and there are several areas in Florence that are on that, the David Ruggles Center, Dorsey Jones House, and among others, and those will be included in this district as well.
So it's for recognition purposes, there's no protection value that comes with the statewide?
Correct.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. And Councilor, please.
Could you tell us the kind of broad boundaries of what the district is, or do you have a map maybe?
Absolutely. The next slide actually shows a map of some of the sites. It's not a contiguous boundary. Steve Strymer, who's really a big proponent of this, just didn't think that would make sense after speaking with some consultants. There are a lot of sites in between that aren't related to this particular history, so this is a more scattered district with a lot of different sites.
Okay, anyone else? Yep. Okay, all those in favor of a positive recommendation in finance, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And no abstentions or opposition, that passes. And now we are on to order number 19.041, upon the recommendation of Mayor David J. Nowitz, in order to declare surplus and authorize sale of former South Street School. Be it ordered Whereas the City of Northampton owns a former elementary school property located at 139 South Street, known as the South Street School, and shown on Assessor's Map 38B, Parcel 32, Lot 1. And whereas in 2007, the Northampton School Committee, after determining that the property was no longer needed for district educational purposes, voted to surplus the building to the city. And whereas the city currently leases the property to Northampton Community Music Center Incorporated, a private nonprofit music education school for $1 per year until June 30th, 2033. And whereas Northampton Community Music Center, Inc. has been an excellent steward of the property, investing significant funds into renovating and maintaining it, and a positive member of the South Street neighborhood and the wider community. And whereas Northampton Community Music Center, Inc. is interested in purchasing the property from the City of Northampton. And whereas the City of Northampton does not have a municipal use for the property, and Mass General Law, Chapter 30B, subsection 16, requires a vote of the City Council to surplus any interest in public property prior to its disposal. And so now be it ordered that the property at 139 South Street is declared surplus to city needs and is hereby transferred to the care, custody, and control of the mayor for the purpose of selling such property for continued use for music education in accordance with the Massachusetts procurement law and on such terms and conditions as the mayor deems reasonable and appropriate, provided that the property shall not be sold for less than its current fair market value, and if sold to a nonprofit entity, shall be subject to the successful bidder entering into an agreement for payment in lieu of taxes. And I'll first ask if there's a motion to put this on the floor.
Make a motion.
Second.
Thank you, and Mayor.
So this is this would be the third former school building that my administration would ask you to surplus for sale. The South Street School, there was actually a reuse study, a local committee that was formed to study it during Barry Ford's administration in 1995. And at that time, they recommended that the building be surplused and leased at the time. And it ended up being a great landing spot for the Community Music Center, which has been a growing organization that does music education for young and for old. And so actually after 10 years, back in 2000, so the first lease was issued in 2007, and then in 2008, a young strapping Ward 4 counselor brought forward a resolution to extend the lease on behalf of the Community Music Center to 2033. So now there's currently a lease on the property. It's $1 a year, 2033. And Community Music Center has come forward in some discussions and are interested in actually just acquiring the property outright. Part of the issue, it's been a great arrangement, they've been great stewards with the building, but the fact that they don't actually own the building limits their ability in some cases to apply for certain grants, financing for future capital projects. They do have other capital work they want to do on the building, and they have invested millions. Jonathan Wright was here earlier. His wife Meg is on the board, and Jonathan's done a lot of work on that building. And so this order would allow it to be surplused and an RFP issued. And it's somewhat analogous to the Fiker School, which you may recall we surplused several years ago, which had a longtime tenant, Nonotuck Community School, our preschool. And they also had a lease term remaining on theirs, and we surplused it, and they were the successful bidder, and that's worked out great. I view it as they've now been operating in the neighborhood for decades and have been good stewards of the building, good neighbors. It's always been a neighborhood school, so it sort of continues its use. And it really, there's no reason for the city to continue to own it. It just remains sort of as a liability, really, on our books. And our mission is not to be a landlord. It's really to be a municipal government. So in the same spirit that we decided to surplus the Fiker School, and now, and before that, we surplused and sold the Florence Grammar School, I'm proposing that we do the same for the South Street School.
Yes, Counselor.
Will the contract have in it that it must remain a music school for a certain amount of time, or will they have to finish out the 2033?
It'll definitely, we will work into it just like we did with the Fiker School, that it has to be used for early childhood education for a set period. Effectively, it'll be sold with the lease on it till 2033. So if somebody other than the Community Music Center were to acquire it, they'd have to honor the lease until 2033. And the lease specifies that it has to be a music education tenant. So we will have that stipulation, and in fact, it's embedded in the order that it would be music education. I don't see that they have any plans to go anywhere, but we also want to make sure that that it stays within the character. Really, the property could only be used for a school or for housing under the current zoning. That's really all that's allowed there. So again, it fits in with the zoning of the neighborhood.
And as a school, it'll have a pilot attached to it?
That is correct. With all of these surplus agreements, that we've stipulated that if a tax-exempt organization purchases it, we would do a pilot agreement. What I've been doing with all of the nonprofits, including the Fiker School, is I've been applying the 25% model that I proposed to the community several years ago, which is based on the Boston model. So the pilot would basically be equivalent of 25% of what the taxes would be if it were a tax-paying entity. And that, again, is the same arrangement we have with Fiker School. It's the same arrangement we have with several other smaller pilots that we have in the city.
It's not the same as the Florence Grammar School, is it?
Well, Florence Grammar, there were several nonprofits that were looking at it. It ended up obviously being purchased by private buyers, by the Gudgeon family, but we did have a provision in there that if a tax-exempt organization bought it, that we would put a pilot on it. And this has been a fairly consistent policy of the city. So.
Anyone else, Counselor?
Just a quick comment that I'm a huge fan of the Community Music Center as a neighbor in your neighborhood, but just how they've added to the cultural richness of the city in so many ways. So I think this is just a total win-win. City picks up some capital and a stream of similar to tax revenue, and is removed from liability, and at the same time, this wonderful music center can proceed with improvements that they wouldn't be able to finance otherwise. So it's a tremendous outcome. I'm glad it's moving forward.
Definitely.
Anyone else? Okay, in finance, on a positive recommendation, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that motion carries, and it goes with a positive recommendation.
Counselor? I think
Yes.
one item might have been skipped
Oh,
before.
excuse me.
If I'm not mistaken.
I just skipped a page here, sorry.
It's at the bottom.
19.038.
Oh, I apologize. Yep, oh, okay. So we'll go back now then, folks, to 19.038, please, which is an order to appropriate CPA funds for Broadbrook Greenway Invasive Plant Control Project. Upon recommendation of the Community Preservation Committee, ordered that, whereas the Broadbrook Coalition submitted an application for Community Preservation Act funding for continued removal of invasive plants, spotted and brown knapweeds on the dam and in Cook's pasture, glossy buckthorn in Cook's pasture, and black swallowwort in the Broadbrook Greenway. And whereas the project's control and removal of invasive plants meets goals established by the Northampton Open Space, Recreation, and Multi-Use Trail Plan and Rediscovering Northampton, and will protect habitat areas of rare and endangered plant and animal species. And whereas the applicant has used these funds effectively in the past, with prevalence of target species reduced, and the project includes extensive volunteer efforts. And whereas on March 20th, 2019, the Northampton Community Preservation Committee voted unanimously to recommend $6,950 in Community Preservation Act funds be used to support this project. Now therefore be it ordered that $6,950 be appropriated from Community Preservation Act funding to the Broadbrook Greenway Invasive Plant Control Project, and that the grantee meets the conditions approved by the Community Preservation Committee, the mayor, and the city council. Specifically, $6,950 is appropriated from the CPA budgeted reserve account. I'll ask for a motion in finance.
Make a motion?
Okay, moved and seconded for a positive recommendation, and do we have someone to speak to this?
Sarah.
Sarah, okay, thank you.
So this is not the first time that this project has come before you. It's been funded, I think, twice before by the CPA and the city council. Broadbrook Coalition has been working pretty tirelessly over the last decade or maybe even more to control invasive plants and restore native habitat in the Broadbrook Greenway and especially around and within Fitzgerald Lake. And this project will allow them to continue that work and not lose the progress that they've made.
Okay, any other yes, please, Counselor.
Ms. LaValle, you mentioned that we've awarded this money, appropriated the money 2 times at least. I thought it was more, but I'm sure you're right. We might do it again next year, I assume. It's kind of an ongoing battle. You don't just win the battle on invasive weeds.
So a lot of progress has been made, and the amounts of the requests have definitely been going down.
Right.
EDC has been able to do a lot more with volunteers and is needing to rely less and less each year on outside contractors. So they've definitely been making progress, but yes, it's a continuing battle.
Yeah, I would just register my observation that, we don't want to become part of the operating budget of another organization, a permanent fixture. So it would be encouraging to know that Broadbrook, in this case, had a multi-year plan of some kind, to gauge where we're going. And actually, I didn't think about that, the fact that the amounts have gone down year after year. I like that, because that way we're not just appropriating tens of thousands of dollars or whatever we might have done the first time we did this, year after year after year. That would be concerning. But I guess my comment would be, I hope it's being thought about that, it's not a perpetual source of money, and I would like to see a long-term plan.
Yeah. Absolutely, and this definitely is part of a long-term plan. Broadbrook Coalition submitted pretty extensive documentation about what they've been able to do so far. This is getting towards the end of this particular plan. And Bob Zimmerman, who's the president of BBC, unfortunately wasn't able to make it tonight, but he could speak more to that and the progress they've made and where they hope to go from here.
Thank you. And I see a member of the public who made a demonstration of how the chemical is applied, and it seems to be applied very tactically and precisely and cautiously. You would agree with that?
I would guess, as far as Broadbrook Coalition presented it, and they actually work with the same consultant that Lathrop Community does.
Yeah, a different organization, but yeah,
Yes.
okay, but same ethos. Great, thank you.
Councilor Labarge and then
Yes.
Councilor Nash, please.
Sarah, how much of an improvement has been made since they have been using the chemicals, the pesticides on this property, of getting rid of what they have to get rid of? A significant difference, correct?
Correct.
Of controlling and doing away, right?
Some,
much?
it depends on the species. Some species are nearly almost gone. Some of them have a longer-term seed bank and are harder to control and get rid of, and that's what this portion of the application is focused on, but definitely a significant difference from here.
Thank you.
Councilor Nash?
Well, just a broader question about the types of herbicides, pesticides that are being used here. Is that preordained, or?
There were options included in the application. I don't have that in front of me. I'd have to go back and look at the specific types that were proposed, but that was done in correlation with the consultant, based on the site conditions and the types of plants.
And are there efforts to avoid using I'm trying to what lengths do we go to here to not use pesticides?
Broadbrook Coalition is really judicious in their use. They are starting to rely more and more on volunteer labor as they're able to do so. For some species, like water chestnut, there are some places around the state and the country that will use herbicides to get rid of those. Broad River Coalition doesn't do that. They've been relying exclusively on hand pulling. So they've been looking at volunteer labor where they can, so they can avoid the pesticide use. But their consultant has advised them, and they've seen through experience that some of them just really can't be treated with hand pulling alone.
Thank you.
Counselor?
Sarah, am I right that these are different plants than from the last application? Different targeted?
From the last application, possibly. There are a lot of different plants that they've been focusing on. I believe these are different than the most recent one.
I can't see the bottom of that photo, but is it in the water? Because the last ones were in the water and they had to kind of paddle out to them and.
Those are not, the bottom picture is just sort of
It's just, oh, okay.
panorama.
All right. Sorry, Laura.
Those are native plants, the ones with the poofy stuff on top.
Oh, okay,
Those
good.
are the.
Good to know.
Those are invasive ragweed.
Was there any other question for Ms. LaValle? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of this order in finance for a positive recommendation, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And that is so ordered. Thank you. And that actually is the last item on the agenda, so I'll ask for the motion. Pardon? Oh, the bench, sorry, missed the bench. Yes, order 19.042. Upon recommendation of the mayor, in order to accept gift of bench from Leeds Civic Association, ordered that whereas the Leeds Civic Association would like to see a deteriorated bench along the bike path near Mulberry Street replaced and wishes to provide funding to the city for a new bench, now therefore be it ordered that Northampton City Council gratefully accepts the donation of $1,103 as a gift to the city of Northampton to be used towards the purchase of a new bench near the bike path in accordance with the Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 40, Section 53A, Grants and Gifts, Acceptance and Expenditure. Do we have a motion?
Make a motion.
Moved and seconded for a positive recommendation. Mayor, please.
So, I think you have a photo possibly of where it's located. I don't know if that was part of it.
It wasn't in my finance packet.
Right. You've already heard from someone from the
Yeah.
Leeds Civic Association tonight, and this is a great collaborative project. The DPW is going to work with them to get this bench installed and create a little sitting area, parklet area. And again, we'd be accepting this donation. $1,000. And then DPW would be involved in helping to install it. So I think it's a great collaborative project, and we're grateful to the Leeds Civic Association for making the donation, and would urge the city council to join me in gratefully accepting it on behalf of the city.
Okay. Yes, Councilor Labarge.
Yes, how could we say no to this? I mean, this is great.
Yes, it's kind of a no-brainer, I think. Yeah, so, agreed.
Does anybody else have any questions for the mayor regarding this? And I'll ask then, in finance, is there a motion for a positive recommendation? We already made it. So all those in favor of a positive recommendation, say aye. Aye. And that motion carries. So now there's a final motion. Someone would offer,
Move to adjourn.
and seconded. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
Madam Chair. Now we'll proceed to take up those and other financial orders in the City Council. And we will start with 19.036, in order to approve the purchase of 85 acres, give or take, in Mineral Hills, Rocky Hill, and Beaver Brook Greenways, and to appropriate community preservation funds for such purpose. Do I hear a motion to approve this? Okay, made and seconded. Any discussion on this order? Okay. Then I'll ask for a roll.
Councilor Bidwell.
Yes.
Councilor Carnes.
Yes.
Councilor Labarge.
Yes.
Councilor Nash.
Yes.
Councilor O'Donnell.
Yes.
Councilor Shara.
Yes.
The financial order is approved on first reading. Next is 19.037, in order to appropriate $30,000 in Community Preservation Act funds to Florence National Register Historic District Project. Okay?
Second.
And second by Councilor Shara. Any discussion on this financial order? You heard some of it before in the Finance Committee. So we're ready to vote on it in the city council by roll call, please.
Counselor Carney,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Murphy, present, Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor O'Donnell,
Yes.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
and Counselor Bidwell.
Yes.
Okay, approved on first reading. Next is 19.038, in order to appropriate Community Preservation Act funds for Broadbrook Greenway Invasive Plant Control Project. Motion approved by Counselor Labarge and seconded by Counselor
Shara.
Shara. Any discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor O'Donnell,
Yes.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
Counselor Bidwell,
Yes.
and Counselor Carney.
Yes.
It's approved in first reading. Next is 19.041, in order to declare surplus and authorize the sale of former South Street School.
Second?
Okay. Discussion on this order. Seems to make sense to me. It is similar to the Fiker School issue in Bay State. Seems just pragmatic decision. So, okay. Roll call.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor O'Donnell,
Yes.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
Counselor Bidwell,
Yes.
Counselor Carney,
Yes.
and Counselor Labarge.
Approved in first reading. Next, 19.042, in order to accept a gift of bench from Leeds Civic Association. Okay, discussion. Okay, thank you. Roll call, presumably, thank you. Yes.
Counselor Shara.
Yes.
Counselor Bidwell.
Yes.
Counselor Carney.
Yes.
Counselor Labarge.
Yes.
And Counselor Nash.
Yes.
Approved on first reading. Next, series of financial orders on second reading. First is 18-234, in order to accept Mass General Law, Chapter 64G, 3DA, to impose community impact fee on short-term rentals. Motion approved.
Second.
Second by Councilor Bidwell. Any discussion this time around? Councilor Nash.
So, yes, thank you. So on city services the other day, we heard from the building commissioner, and it raised a number of questions for me, and I think it did for other counselors at the meeting around terminology, and specifically, there was a concern around sprinkler systems needing to be installed and things like that. And that, and I saw we were headed back to second reading here on this, and it had prompted a phone call to the mayor's office, and oh, look, he's standing over there. And we had a little discussion around some of this, and I think it would be helpful if we shared some of what we talked about. So my concern was that by accepting...
Phone? Or just I'm just kidding.
My concern was that by, accepting this, that we were also taking on all of those responsibilities that had to do with the possible building code things that we would have to be enforcing. So the mayor and I had a discussion, and
Yeah, so one of the concerns that Commissioner Hasbrook has had, and he has no concerns about the acceptance of this local, option. One of the concerns he's expressed is that, and we've had some internal meetings about it, is just, the legislature has passed this law and created this new type of rental unit, and then, so there's the law sitting there, but then you've got all these other state codes that are created through a regulatory process, the building code, fire codes, and he said that, those are gonna have to be reconciled in some cases, and those will have to sort of be, in some cases, even updated to adapt to that. So I think he was just expressing that as one of the things that's coming forward. It's not something that the city is gonna necessarily be doing, but what decisions that are made at that level may have an impact. He also said that, until this gets going and we start to understand the universe of the properties that are involved, then I think we'll have a clearer picture. I know that he mentioned that, new bed and breakfasts that get constructed now require sprinkler systems, if you built a brand new bed and breakfast today. So he doesn't know what's going to happen with all of these issues that are raised by short-term rentals. And a lot of it's just because it's a new form of lodging, and you've got, bed and breakfasts that are held to one standard, you've got apartments or hotels that are held to standards, and so I think there's still going to be a further shakeout as a result of this legislation at a regulatory level. So I think that's what he was talking about. And I did call him after our conversation just to confirm that. And so he's fine. That doesn't have any impact on what we're doing here, because this is a fairly prescribed, piece of the act that's based on really clearly defined definitions in the act. He wasn't there to talk about this act. He was there to just talk about his office and what was happening. And I think you guys raised short-term rentals. So that's the context.
Councilor Nash, do you want to respond to that, or does that answer?
I think you've explained, answered my question, and that, that all of these regulations are all coming down from the state. It's not anything that we are going to impose here, whether we accept this or not, and that it's going to be the state's issue to figure out.
Yeah.
So that was really helpful for me. So I'm comfortable moving forward with this now.
Because certainly, the building code applies to short-term rentals now, whether or not we tax them locally.
That is correct.
And I've seen in other communities actually explore registries so they know where they all are and that whole thing. So I agree it's shaking out, but there's no safety issues because the building code is the building code, whether or not we recognize short-term rentals for the purpose of a local tax.
Exactly.
Okay.
And we will be actually bringing forward, I was talking to Councilor Nash, we are planning to bring forward some zoning ordinances relative to short-term rentals that will give us the ability to understand at a local level where they are, as well as kind of reserve our right to be able to make changes as this evolves in the future. But
Yeah.
we'll be submitting those
Good.
soon.
Good. So Councilor Barge. And then Councilor.
Yeah, city service, I think, really did a very good job explaining to the best that he could, because it's still, I think, very difficult for a lot of people to really understand the language of this. And because of the state, I had concerns of the accessory apartments, in-laws, mother and father and so forth like that, which he really did an excellent job on that with the language and so forth. So I think I feel better about this, and we're dealing with the state, and it's very difficult sometimes.
Councilor Bidwell?
I was just going to ask about the process of registering these units at the state, and then that registry being made available at the local level, if I understand it correctly.
Yeah, they haven't, one of the reasons why they had a 6-month, period before it was enacted is that, Mass DOR is gonna have to create all of this, registry mechanism, but as I understand it, people will register with Mass DOR, and including if they only plan to Airbnb for less than 15 days, they still register and file an exemption. And that will kind of create the interface with the various short-term rental platforms that will be required to provide that information, and in some cases collect, there's a state tax, and then there's also, for the cities and towns that have accepted the hotel motel tax, they'll be collecting a local excise tax. We are exploring, also a mechanism at the local level to gather that information as well. But presumably we'll have access to it as well at the state registry.
6 months or so down the road.
Yeah, it's again, I don't know where their progress is on this. I know other laws, other programs that have been implemented, they've had to give themselves extensions on. So I don't know how far along. They have been, updating frequently asked questions and putting out some various forms, including the form for if we take this vote that has to be filled out and sent back to them. But I'm assuming they'll be working in the next several months to get whatever it is that Airbnb or short-term rental proprietors will need to submit in order to participate in the program.
Anyone else? No? Ready to vote? Okay. I'll ask for a roll call, please.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
Counselor Bidwell,
Yes.
Counselor Carney,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor O'Donnell.
Yes. That is approved in second reading. Next is 19.013, in order to appropriate approximately $1.699 million from free cash for various capital projects. Any discussion on second reading? We talked about it last time. It's a lot of money. Okay, and a roll call, please.
Counselor Bidwell,
Yes.
Counselor Carney.
Yes.
Counselor Labarge.
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor O'Donnell,
Yes.
Counselor Shara.
Yes.
Approved on second reading. Next is 19.014, in order to appropriate $44,000 from parking receipts reserved for four, or parking receipts reserved for four parking kiosks. Yeah, that's it. Made by Councilor Labarge and seconded by
Second.
Councilor Bidwell. Any discussion on this on second reading? Okay. Then roll call.
Counselor Carney.
Yes.
Counselor Labarge.
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor O'Donnell,
Yes.
Counselor Shara.
Yes.
And Counselor Bidwell.
Yes.
Approved on second reading. Next is 19.015, in order to appropriate $1.175 million from capital stabilization for various capital projects.
To approve.
Second.
Very good. Any discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Counselor Labarge. Yes. Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor O'Donnell,
Yes.
Counselor Shara.
Yes.
Counselor Bidwell.
Yes.
And Counselor Carney.
Yes.
Approved on second reading. Next is 19.016, in order to authorize borrowing in the amount of $950,000 to construct cold storage facility at Spring Grove Cemetery. Motion to approve on second reading?
Move approval.
Second.
Okay. Discussion on this. I would like to just comment on this and bring up a couple of points. So, there's obviously interested neighborhood members, one in particular, I think, in the Spring Grove area, and I think this is a good project. One interesting idea that's been brought up that I've heard is the idea of creating an access road from the back of the cemetery to Mountain Street. Because as we know, there's a gated entrance on Spring Grove, and then there's another side entrance on Mountain Street. But if you actually go back there, you see an old road that used to exist. It's kind of grown over.
That connects to North Farms Road.
That would connect. Thank you. Yeah. And so this is something I think would be a positive thing, but
Mr. Parcelletti has actually been exploring that.
Uh-huh.
He's even had some conversations with Sarah LaValle about it as well.
Okay.
It is something that it was an old road that was an access road, and so they have had some discussions. I know there'll be a site plan for this, so
Right.
there'll probably be continued discussions there, but I know that he's definitely interested in exploring what it would entail in terms of permitting to be able to reopen that as an access way, to provide that kind of back access.
yeah, I mean, yeah, if there's going to be construction there anyway, and that could be rolled into the project and be part of the site plan.
He's
that
actually
goes to the
interested
planning
in,
board.
he thinks they may be able to just do it the DPW may be able to just do it themselves.
Just it's so simple, they could just, in a couple days.
Because it
yeah.
wouldn't be, it'd probably be a gravel road. It
Yeah.
wouldn't be,
Yeah.
paved road. So I think he's interested in doing it, but obviously, like, we need to get the proper permissions, and so I know he's been checking into potential conservation issues with that. So, but it's definitely something that we're exploring.
Yeah, I think they have a positive feature of
Yep.
the project.
Definitely.
And yeah, just getting the vehicles in from the outside, because they're kind of laying all around the yard now. It's what the DPW wants to achieve, so.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, good, thank you. I wanted to make that point.
Mr. President.
Any other discussion on this second reading? Okay, so we can have a roll call on this, please.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor O'Donnell,
Yes.
Counselor Shara.
Yes.
Counselor Bidwell.
Yes.
Counselor Carney.
Yes.
And Counselor Labarge.
Yes.
Okay, that's approved on second reading. Next is 19.016, 017, in order to authorize borrowing in the amount of $220,000 to purchase DPW vehicles and equipment. Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, discussion on second reading. Hearing none, have a roll call.
Counselor O'Donnell,
Yes.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
Counselor Bidwell,
Yes.
Counselor Carney,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge.
Yes.
Counselor Nash.
Yes.
Approved on second reading. Next, 19.018, in order to authorize borrowing the amount of $180,000 for Jackson Street School boiler.
Move approval?
Second.
Made and seconded. Any discussion? Getting a new boiler for a school. Okay. Whenever you're ready, with a roll call.
Counselor Shara.
Yes.
Counselor Bidwell.
Yes.
Counselor Carney,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge.
Yes.
Counselor Nash.
Yes.
And Counselor O'Donnell.
Yes. Approved in second reading. Next is 19.019, in order to appropriate $25,000 from Cemetery Trust and Income Fund for cemetery restoration.
To approve.
Made and
Second.
seconded. Any discussion? Roll call.
Counselor Bidwell.
Yes.
Counselor Carney.
Yes.
Counselor Labarge.
Yes.
Counselor Nash.
Yes.
Counselor O'Donnell.
Yes.
Counselor Shara.
Yes.
Okay, that is approved in second reading. Next is 19.020. This is an order to appropriate the mayor's payment in lieu of taxes and gift fund money to purchase Chromebooks.
Approval?
Okay. Discussion on second reading on this one. There was some significant discussion at the last meeting, so. Okay, so ready for a roll call this time?
Counselor Carney.
Yes.
Counselor Labarge.
Yes.
Counselor Nash.
Yes.
Counselor O'Donnell.
Yes.
Counselor Shara.
Yes.
And Counselor Bidwell.
Yes.
Approved on second reading. And now, 19.021, in order to reprogram NFR exhaust system money to replace NFR utility brush unit.
To approve.
Second.
Okay, discussion on this one. Roll call.
Counselor Labarge.
Yes.
Counselor Nash.
Yes.
Counselor O'Donnell.
Yes.
Counselor Shara.
Yes.
Counselor Bidwell.
Yes.
And Counselor Carney.
Yes.
Okay, that's approved in second reading. Next is 19.022, in order to appropriate cable funds to ITS for various projects.
To approve.
Second.
Okay, discussion. Okay, roll call.
Counselor Nash.
Yes.
Counselor O'Donnell.
Yes.
Counselor Shara.
Yes.
Counselor Bidwell.
Yes.
Counselor Carney.
Yes.
And Counselor Labarge.
Yes.
Approved in second reading. Now 19.023, in order to reprogram NFR surplus funds to SCBA replacement.
To approve.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Counselor O'Donnell.
Yes.
Counselor Shara.
Yes.
Counselor Bidwell.
Yes.
Counselor Carney.
Yes.
Counselor Labarge. And Counselor Nash.
Yes.
Approved on second reading. Next is 19.027, in order to award $3,000 in Community Preservation Act funds to Lathrop Communities for invasive species removal.
Move approval.
Second.
All right. Discussion on this one. Very good. Roll call.
Counselor Shara.
Yes.
Counselor Bidwell.
Yes.
Counselor Carney.
Yes.
Counselor Labarge.
Yes.
Counselor Nash.
Yes.
And Counselor O'Donnell.
Yes. That's approved on second reading. Next is 19.028, in order to award $3,000 in Community Preservation Act funds for signage upgrades project. Motion.
To approve.
Second.
Okay. So, Director Fiden or Ms. LaValle, or both of you, if you want, I wonder if you would provide some background on this, because we didn't have it last time.
Sure.
That would be helpful.
Yeah, so we have signs for our conservation areas, are all different ages. Some are pressure-treated signs and aren't in great shape. Some are Ipe signs and black locust, which are fairly good shape. So, and then we have some areas, you all have been improving a lot of conservation areas. We have some areas where we don't have signs yet. And then we also, last element, I'll describe this in more detail, we have a lot of people who give us money from a lot of different sources, and we have to give them credit for state grants and federal grants and nonprofit grants to do these little logos. So what we want to do is we want to finish getting rid of all the pressure-treated signs that are in bad shape. We want to freshen up the other signs that are in good shape, and we want to put new signs, either where the old signs have old names, or where there are no signs at all. So it's basically going to be giving notice. What we found is we've bought a lot of land and people love using the property, but sometimes people live next to a conservation area and don't even know it's there. And so then we find that there's a few people who know our properties and some people don't know what's right in the next door. We've simplified our signs in recent years because we decided people didn't really care who owned it. So it used to be the sign that would say, X Greenway, and then below it would say Northampton Conservation Commission. We've gotten rid of Northampton Conservation signs, so they're very simple. It's a simple sign, and we just replaced them with these small logos on top of it. So it's basically an upgrade process.
Okay. Are there safety concerns, like people need them to find their way out or anything like that? Or is it just more along the lines of what you described?
Really, it's along the lines of what we said. So it's
No
both
safety issues?
There's no safety issues.
Okay.
It's to serve the public, but it's also fulfill the obligations we made for grant sources when they came in.
Do the grants specifically say we have to put up signs?
Yes.
They do?
So federal land and water conservation fund, state self-help grant, which is now called land, and the state urban self-help, which is now called park, they all require signs.
Okay. So if we couldn't put up signs, are we ineligible for grants?
Yes.
Okay.
They audit
You'd have
us
to-
every few years, they come back and look at our signs. Typically, it's when we're applying for more grants out there.
I see. Okay. Any other discussion on this from anyone else? Okay. I mean, I posed it last time because I basically think there's, I don't know, too many signs in the world. It's like a kind of a grumpy old man argument, but like, so I kind of question whether we need more signs for conservation areas. They're everywhere else in society, but if it jeopardizes grant money, then I guess that is an actual use for it.
And if it makes a difference, we are, as I say, the old signs were bigger, because I think we share sort of not wanting too many signs. So that's why I have a simple sign that's 4 or 5 feet long, usually 4 feet long by 6 inches. So that's the only sign we have out there that's on the road. I mean, some of our partners do kiosks, that's our basic sign.
Got it. Councilor Bidwell.
I actually think it's an important thing to do, is to identify the funding sources. It's always important to be able to point to your federal tax dollars at work, your state tax dollars at work. So I think it's a good thing to educate people about that.
Councilor Scher.
I would also say that, as you said, it's good to tell people that this is land that they can use, and if they, it shouldn't be privileged information that only a few know. Everyone should have access to it.
Any other discussion? I mean, I think it's too bad that we can't get certain grant money unless we put up signs. I think that's kind of weird, but that's out of my control. So, any other discussion? All right. We have a roll call on this.
Councilor Bidwell?
Yes.
Councilor Carney?
Yes?
Councilor Labarge?
Yes.
Councilor Nash?
Yes.
Councilor O'Donnell?
Yes.
Councilor Shara?
Yes.
Okay, that is approved on second reading. Next is 19.029, order reward $3,000 in CPA funds to Historic Northampton for historic textile preservation project.
Move approval.
Okay, any discussion on this one? Roll call.
Councilor Carney?
Yes?
Councilor Labarge?
Yes.
Councilor Nash?
Yes.
Councilor O'Donnell?
Yes.
Councilor Shara?
Yes.
Councilor Bidwell?
Yes.
Okay, that's approved in second reading. Next is 19.030, in order to award $3,000 in Community Preservation Act funds, to the ONE1 Northampton logo and signage project. Motion to approve this, please.
Move approval.
Second.
Okay. Director Fiden, would you also elucidate the difference, maybe, between?
Sure. So this is a new project in the new open space plan, which just passed last summer. One of the goals we set up is a 26-mile trail, or probably a 26.2-mile trail, that circles the city. And part of the reason it's important to us, this is the same thing like getting people out there, is we actually think we have more trail miles than almost any community in Western Mass. But I don't think we have that perception. I think it's because some other towns have the M&M Trail, or the Robert Frost Trail, or sort of big, Appalachian Trail, big well-known trails. And so we wanted to basically link all the existing trails together, fill in the gaps, so that people can know that it all connects together. Some of this comes from, not rarely, 4 or 5 times a year, we get calls from people who got lost in our conservation land. They knew that they were on a trail. They didn't get lost like the bears didn't eat them, but they didn't know how to get out. And we realized that our trails really work for people who are comfortable walking, but we want it to be open to everybody. So the idea is this 26-mile trail would loop around, and that would sort of be the Cadillac, the interstate of trails. It would be well-maintained, it would be well-signed, and then there'd be all the other local trails that people might want to walk, but there'd be one major trail. We got the idea, in the Alps, there's I don't know my Italian, but there's something one in Italy, and there's, something one in Austria, and a lot of countries use this thing so that this trail that goes hundreds of miles, is the one trail you can follow. That's the idea for this. This would really just be the logo portion of the project.
Okay. Any discussion? So this one, I hear there is a safety concern for having the signs up because people are actually getting lost out there.
That's correct.
And there's bears and
Again,
who knows what's out.
no one's getting, Sawmill Hills is the best example. There are several miles of trails in Sawmill Hills, and people, they don't get lost in terms of losing the trail. They're really not dying, but they get frustrated. They say, I hiked in 20 minutes and it took me an hour to hike out, and so we're trying to improve that. I don't overstate the safety concern. Yes, it's
good.
frustrating for people, but they're
Okay.
not being eaten.
So, but this is for the logo. Okay. So that's another question is, we have a bunch of logos everywhere in our society as well. And it just seems like, can't we just have like a simple sign that says this way out if we need to direct people?
We can. Part of the thing is the logo is actually more you might like this because of the sign piece. The logo is more space efficient. So if you look at some of our partners in, say, the Mineral Hills and the Sawmill Hills, they have good signs that say, a mile to the parking lot, whatever. It takes some space on a wooden sign. What our goal is to have is a 3.5-inch disc or a 4-inch diamond. We're still playing with one of those things. That it has enough color and is identifying that this very small marker shows you where the trail is, and we don't need to do bigger signs. And frankly, it's cheaper because I can buy 1,000 of them and use them everywhere instead of having to customize signs along the way.
Okay. Thank you. Any other discussion on this? I'm the only one who cares. Oh, no, go ahead.
Wayne, how long is the proposed loop?
Well, our working figure is 26.2 miles, but that happens to be a marathon, so that was deliberate. So we're still figuring out exactly what it would be. It would be about half on existing rail trails and multi-use trails, and about half going through trails. When we laid it out, it actually came out to almost exactly 26 miles, but we still need, we know it's going to go through the middle of Sawmill Hills, but there's 4 parallel trails. We haven't figured out which one we use yet. So, plus or minus 0.2 mile.
And go ahead.
Well, I just want to say, I attended one of the planning meetings, and it was well attended by conservation folks all over the city. And this idea of unifying the trails is actually pretty cool. That the idea that you can be in one, conservation area and actually end up on the other side of town, and virtually be, there's times where you got to be on a road, but mostly you can be in wilderness and walk from one side walk around the city. It's a really cool concept. So,
Councilor Barge.
Yes, and I think when we verify, we've been looking to do this for a long time to connect all the wards and doing that loop.
That's correct, absolutely.
Any other discussion? Sometimes it's the small things that are the most interesting and matter the most in our lives. All right. You've touched something in my soul.
just connect the wards.
Connect the wards. I like that.
That's all.
It'll never happen. Anyway. Okay, good. So we're ready to vote on this, it sounds like. I'll ask for a roll call.
Counselor Labarge.
Yes.
Counselor Nash.
Yes.
Counselor O'Donnell.
Yes.
Counselor Shara.
Yes.
Counselor Bidwell.
Yes.
And Counselor Carney.
Yes.
That is approved on second reading. I'd like a motion to approve this ordinance, and I'll explain why in a second. We are going to refer it. This is 19.039, an ordinance relative to parking on Main Street. I move approval.
Second?
Second, I'd like to amend the title. I think it should say, an ordinance relative to parking on Main Street in Florence. That is my motion. Someone second that?
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? I just think that the public is, we should be advised that we're talking about Main Street Florence, not Main Street Northampton. Am I incorrect about that?
No, it's a
I think
point
that's
well
an
taken.
excellent suggestion.
I think we could do a better job sometimes naming our. No, you're right.
That's true.
The Parking and Main Street Florence Act of 2019. No, thank you. So this will just say, we're adding the word Florence at the end of this ordinance, okay? To the amendment, all those in favor of the amendment,
Aye.
please say
Aye.
aye. Any opposed, any abstentions? So it's amended now. Is there a motion to, if no further discussion, motion to refer?
Referral to legislative matters.
Thank you very much. Made and seconded. Any discussion on the referral? All those in favor of the referral, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, any abstentions? Any new business tonight? Not from me. Any motion to adjourn?
To adjourn?
And seconded, who wants to second that?
Second.
Second, good. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, any abstentions? Thank you. Good night.